Battle of Britain, the pivotal moment that reshaped the course of contemporary history. Operation Sea Lion stands out as a symbol of World War II due to the profound threat it posed to the existing world order. Had it been executed, the trajectory of history might have unfolded radically differently from the familiar narrative we know today. While historians engage in ongoing debates, with some dismissing this strategy as overly ambitious, dismissed as a product of National Socialist fantasies, the speculative contemplation of its potential impact remains inevitable. Today, in History Dat, we delve into one of the most remarkable and decisive battles of World War II. Not only is it distinguished as the first-ever aerial battle, but it also marks the initial German setback in the Second World War. To this day, it stands as the most extensive air campaign in history. By the onset of World War II, Germany had achieved decisive victories in significant battles, focusing its immediate aspirations on a singular goal: England. With the United Kingdom being the sole power resisting German domination, the tension between the two nations' leaders grew increasingly palpable. Following the surrender of France, Adolf Hitler presumed that the United Kingdom would swiftly follow suit, a belief reinforced by the neutral stance adopted by the United States in the conflict. The situation for the British became progressively dire as they faced isolation, compounded by constant attacks from German U-boats on merchant ships returning from British colonies or the American continent. Surprisingly, Germany did not deploy the Luftwaffe to England, as they were convinced of an imminent British surrender. However, the United Kingdom defied expectations, refusing to capitulate and staking all its resources to continue the war against Germany. During this period, they boasted the world's strongest navy, a formidable asset in resisting the German onslaught. From June 1940 until the United States entered into the war in December 1941, the British stood virtually alone as the primary force confronting National Socialist Germany. Seeing that the British had no intention of surrendering, Hitler began to devise a plan to invade the British Isles. This plan was codenamed Operation Sea Lion. The German air forces had won overwhelming victories in their latest records, so Commander-in-Chief Hermann Göring was incredibly motivated when the Führer gave him details of the plan. The strategy for developing the plan effectively was to attack intensively using the various air bases Germany had throughout Europe. For the High Command, the victory was only a matter of days, since the numerical difference between the RAF and the Luftwaffe was very notorious, counting the Germans with 3,600 airplanes against the 871 British ships. Although this plan was not officially executed, the preparations were extremely intense, and some attacks were made on different fronts. These attacks were intended to intimidate the British and to divert the attention of the USSR, whom they wanted to attack in the future. Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister, devised all kinds of plans to deal with these invasions. The military man considered all kinds of strategies, from trying to spray fuel in the waters of the ports to make them explode, to planning to cover the coastlines with an extensive power line to electrocute the pilots. Paradoxically, what would help the British against Operation Sea Lion would have nothing to do with the strategies just mentioned. The Germans' plan to prepare for the invasions of Operation Sea Lion was to replicate the strategy they had used against Poland, i.e., to destroy enemy aircraft before they took flight. For this reason, the British decided to cancel their Channel shipping, forcing the Germans to change their focus of attack. The objective of Göring, the commander-in-chief of the Luftwaffe, changed radically, as he now sought to attack British airfields and hangars. The British had already foreseen this, so they built false hangars and hid the real ones, so that the Germans could not destroy so many ships. On August 15, 1940, Operation Eagle Day was launched, so the Luftwaffe carried out more than 2,100 attack actions on that day. The RAF suffered devastating consequences, while the Germans lost only 40 aircraft. Days later, on August 24-25, the Germans destroyed London's iconic East End while attempting to bomb the oil terminals on the River Thames. The Führer had pronounced himself totally against this attack, but his subordinates accidentally disobeyed this order. The British responded to this event in the same way, i.e., by attacking an urban area. Paradoxically, their initial desire was not to attack civilians either, but Tempelhof Airport and the Siemens factory. Compared to the German attacks, it could be said that the damage produced by the British bombing of Berlin was insignificant, but it was enough to make Hitler furious, and he decided to take matters into his own hands, so he radically changed his initial strategy. Thus, on September 7, 1940, the famous Blitz was launched, a campaign of constant bombing of British cities, but with a special focus on London. The city of London was relentlessly bombed during September and November, being attacked daily by the Germans. Although this would have meant defeat for the British in any other context, Churchill decided to face the partial destruction of London in exchange for giving the RAF time to reorganize and greatly increase aircraft production, especially the mythical Supermarine Spitfire. Under any circumstances, it might seem that Germany was overwhelming the British, as day after day the United Kingdom suffered the consequences of the devastation caused by the bombing. In addition to the enormous feeling of fear that gripped its citizens, fear that Hitler considered essential to carry out the execution of Operation Sea Lion, given the chaos that a frightened civilization represents for an operation of this magnitude. However, the good omens that abounded among senior German commanders and their troops began to wane as the prognosis for Operation Sea Lion began to change dramatically. Initially, an enthusiastic Göring had told the Führer that the RAF would be destroyed in a matter of days, so that the invasion could be carried out without any problems. This mood had settled on the Germans, who saw the execution of Operation Sea Lion as imminent. But, as the days passed, this changed radically. The Kriegsmarine, the armed force of Nazi Germany during World War II, began to grow impatient when they saw that the fundamental requirement for the invasion was not carried out, that is, the destruction of the RAF. This had an impact on the morale of the troops and on the relations between the German divisions, who were looking for a culprit to justify the lack of effectiveness in the attacks. On the other hand, things were completely the other way around for the British, i.e., morale was rising more and more. As the British put up resistance to the German attacks, hopes of turning the bloody prognosis around grew higher and higher. The outlook for carrying out Operation Sea Lion was getting darker and darker for Hitler, who was already more focused on stopping wasting resources than waiting for the British to surrender. As he found it hard to believe that the Luftwaffe lost over 1,700 aircraft trying to destroy the RAF, especially when it had come so close to doing so in a matter of days. On September 15, 1940, one of the most important air battles of the entire war took place, as a huge group of German and British aircraft clashed relentlessly. This battle is known as Battle of Britain Day and was extremely decisive for the rest of the war. Finally, on September 17, 1940, he decided to cancel Operation Sierra Leone and declare it unfeasible on October 12 of the same year. From that moment on, he ordered the indiscriminate night bombing, as he found a kind of blind spot in the darkness of the night due to one of the most important factors that sentenced his defeat: the radar. This technology played a very important role, so the British dedicated themselves to improve this technology more and more. Because of this, the Führer ordered his pilots to use the night as a form of escape to maneuver more effectively against the RAF, which was already completely restored. The Germans counted on the support of Mussolini, who sent a considerably large force of 40 aircraft, but in January 1941 decided to dispense with his support due to the enormous amount of losses. Meanwhile, the British began to receive more and more support from their colonies and other European countries. Between November 1940 and February 1941, a series of bombing raids were carried out on the cities of Birmingham, Liverpool, Plymouth, Manchester, Sheffield, Hull, Bristol, and Coventry. the latter being the most damaged, being almost reduced to ruins. Although the attacks on London did not stop, they were on a smaller scale. At the end of May 1941, Luftwaffe attacks gradually ceased until the Führer ordered a withdrawal to concentrate on the attack on the Soviet Union in the so-called Operation Barbarossa. The failure in this invasion was a hard blow for the Germans, who would suffer the loss of Western Europe years later because of the base that the Allies would install in the southeast of Great Britain. The Battle of Britain, as Winston Churchill called it in one of his speeches, went down in history as one of the decisive events of World War II because it represented the first defeat of Germany in war, as well as being the first major battle fought entirely in the air. Don't close the video yet. Before you go, please subscribe and leave us a like if you like the content. It will help us grow and continue making much more content. Now, without further ado, we say goodbye.